Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working in E-commerce. I'm your host, Egan Heath. I own Caravan Digital. We're a direct-to-consumer e-commerce marketing agency. We do paid search, paid social, and email automation. Today, we're talking about postcard marketing and direct mail. I'm very excited. This is the first time we've ever talked about this. And we are joined by Michael Epstein, a co-founder of PostPilot. Michael, thanks so much for coming on.
Egan, thanks for having me.
Right on. So, I think a lot of people are used to Facebook ads, they're used to Google ads. Our clients are doing, Klaviyo, email automation and things like that. It may be news to some people that direct mail works in 2022 and beyond. This may come out in 2023, I should say. So, why direct mail this day and age?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really come full circle, I think. It used to be, of course, where the mailbox was where all the junk mail went, and email was where only the most important messages went. And obviously, that's really started to flip-flop. So direct-to-consumer marketers and e-com marketers, of which that is my background. I've run direct-to-consumer brands and been a digital marketer for over 20 years. And, the idea for PostPilot really came from seeing email engagement rates continue to go down over time. You built these great segments. I've been with Klaviyo probably since they first started, and we were big on lifecycle marketing. We built out all these great segments, all these great automated flows, built great creative and segmentation. And then we would look at the open rates and we're like 25, 30%. So how do we reach that large swath of folks that aren't engaging with your email campaigns? And so the idea for PostPilot really originated from that. Someone needs to build Klaviyo for direct mail. And that's really what we did. And you can create segments just like email, and then you can send one-off campaigns to those segments, like a newsletter, a product announcement, sale announcement. And you can do automated flows like Klaviyo, where you trigger an individually personalized card to go out to someone based on the criteria that you've set for that segment. And then we've just seen this surge in demand over the last kind of 12 to 18 months as a result of the iOS issue impacting Facebook performance and people aggressively looking to diversify their marketing channels and find new ways to reach their customers and prospects. And you combine that with kind of the digital overload you're seeing in email and other digital channels, and we've just seen this really big appetite to explore direct mail again.
Well, ouch, you just nailed the why there. Those are a lot of our channels where things are definitely getting harder. So I'm all ears here on the direct mail piece. You mentioned also this could be, if I understood correctly, this could be prospecting top of funnel. This could be remarketing more middle and bottom of funnel. Talk to us a little bit about that. What is targeting like? Let's say on the prospecting side, if someone's used to running Facebook ads, what does it mean to do, prospecting targeting with direct mail? And is that something you guys do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will say that we really strongly encourage brands to start lower in the funnel, start with retention campaigns, the win backs, the types of things that you're doing in email, layer on direct mail as an additional channel. And to your earlier point, Egan, I just want to be really clear. We are not suggesting stop doing email or that email doesn't work or that any of this, you should stop doing your digital marketing. It's simply that you're only reaching some portion of that audience now. And there's low-hanging fruit to leverage the work that agencies like yours do, Egan, particularly in email, and say, let's just supplement that work and mirror a lot of what we're already doing with direct mail so that we can get the incremental revenue that's being left on the table from the folks that we're just not able to reach or engage. So to your question about prospecting and acquisition, again, we recommend starting lower in the funnel with the types of campaigns, kind of those core automations that you're building in Klaviyo for your email flows, win-backs, cross-selling, abandoned carts, VIP campaigns, and then start moving up the funnel as you start to see the efficacy of the channel for your customers and your brand. Then we can do things like sync with we're natively integrated with Klaviyo, so we can sync with your Klaviyo list of leads that you've acquired through a lead magnet or opt-in, but have never converted. And we can find a physical address for that email lead and then retarget them with a postcard. So now you're getting new customer acquisition from folks that have joined your list but never bought from you. But those folks are higher intent because we know they've been to your site, we know that they've opted in, we know that they've expressed interest. So again, you're moving up the funnel that way, and then you continue to move up the funnel into prospecting, doing more things like lookalike modeling, similar to how you would do it on Facebook.
Well, that's awesome. And it makes sense to start lower in the funnel. Actually, just posted on LinkedIn about, everybody wants new customers, but get more from your existing customers. So I think you're giving me a sense of my own medicine here. So that's great. Start bottom of funnel. That's where the money's at. That's where you're going to see the ROI and work your way up from there. So something you said was very interesting to me there. I'm kind of picturing, okay, how do we do this? How do we get those addresses? Is someone opting in on the website and putting in their physical mailing address, or are we just getting name and email and going from that? How does that part work?
Yeah. So if they're an existing customer, we're natively integrated with Shopify. So we can pull that info and create the segments the same way you would create a segment in Klaviyo and target those people because we already have their address. We know that because they placed an order. And then as we move up the funnel to the email leads, then we have technology called Mail Match, where we can match that email prospect to a physical address, and we get a match typically 60-70% of the time, and then can retarget that person who only provided an email address. We can send a physical postcard to their home.
That's great. Michael, I got to back up for just a second. How did you get into this?
We've been in digital marketing and e-com for over 20 years. So is my co-founder. And about 4 years ago, we had used direct mail at some of the portfolio. We typically run private equity portfolio companies, and we've used direct mail successfully at a number of them, but it was just really clunky. It was how you might imagine. It was a bunch of spreadsheets, exporting a bunch of spreadsheets, finding a print house, batch and blasting a bunch of static cards at once to people on your spreadsheet, and then finding more spreadsheets to try and figure out what the ROI was on that campaign. And we literally said, like, somebody needs to build Klaviyo for postcards. So we had this thesis, and we went out and found technology that was our third co-founder was starting to build out this technology. We kind of shared the vision for this, and we invested in that company and helped grow it to what it is today.
What are the pieces that brands should be considering? You've kind of given us a sense of those initial flows, if that's the right word, or those initial pieces that should go out and how we should target. How does a brand get started with this? What do they need?
Yeah, great question. So one, we make it easy at PostPilot. We have a concierge model simply because we observe that so many brands are eager to test the channel, but they've never done it before. So they don't know what the best practices are. They don't know how to do it, make sure they're doing it right. And we want to set brands up for success right out of the gate. And we've done this a million times and we know it works. So we have kind of a concierge model that helps them get started. But the types of things you're going to want to think about, the creative. So think about it similar to a Facebook ad. You're skimming the mail that as you take it out of the mailbox, you want it to be easily recognizable, well branded, consistent with your brand. So they recognize that this is a brand that I've expressed interest in or done business with. Clear message, call to action, incentives to get them to take action, and makes it trackable as well because we can track how many people redeem that coupon code if there's a coupon on the card. And then in the audience and the segmentation, coming up with the right audience based on their behavior, knowing based on recency and frequency are kind of the two biggest levers you can look at. So customer makes a purchase from your brand. Let's say you're a health supplements brand, like Obvi, for example, is a big well-known supplements brand in the D2C space. They have a 60-day supply. They know if a customer goes beyond 60 days, they're at risk of defecting and not returning. So they set a trigger at 90 days, and and anytime a customer goes 90 days without repurchasing, it triggers that card that says, "Hey, Egan, it's time for a refill. You can scan this QR. We'll apply 20% off your basket," whatever that call to action is. And they got like a 24x return on that campaign. And this is the folks that they were already hitting through email and other channels, but hadn't necessarily engaged and just needed an extra nudge to come back. And we see examples like that all the time, but we'll help you kind of get started, do the right segmentation of your audiences. We have an in-house creative department that'll do this for you because, again, most brands even if you're used to creating Facebook ads, haven't done this before and they want to make sure that they're doing it right out of the gate.
On attribution, you've mentioned the coupon codes. I don't know if there's another piece to think about. And then on metrics, I'm curious about that as well. Is it like email without the open rate, or like how do we think about attribution and metrics?
Yeah, great question. So we track attribution in two ways. Because we're natively integrated with Shopify, we know who we sent to, when they receive that card, and if they go on to make a subsequent purchase, and we can track that back to the card that they received. And that's one way of looking at it. And then we also can track whether they used a coupon code that was on that card. And that's typically the much more conservative way of looking at it. So with coupons, typically you find data suggests 10 to 30% or so of people who were influenced by a particular marketing campaign actually use the coupon code on that campaign. I'm sure a bunch of your brands see this in real life. You put a coupon code in an email. Some people use it. Some people just don't. You put it on your website. Some people use it. Some people don't. But it is a good sort of way of just getting a good data point on how that campaign is performing. And we'll show you kind of the whole spectrum of customers that did receive the card and went on to make a purchase.
Are people using specialty landing pages and URLs or anything like that?
Yeah, so QR codes have become kind of best practice again. They kind of came back from the dead a little bit. Now they're hot again. And so people do one, whether it's a dedicated landing page or just for reduced friction, make it really easy to scan a QR and take you right back to the page, or even take you back to your cart if it's an abandoned cart campaign. It's again, best practice for your card. And you can do some interesting things with QRs now too, where you can auto apply a discount code. You can put obviously UTMs for tracking, send them to a dedicated landing page, as you said. And so, yeah, a lot of brands are doing that.
Pretty interesting. And you guys are doing it sounds like cart abandonment. Is there browse abandonment? Tell us a bit about those.
Yeah, so you can set all that up with our Klaviyo integration, for example, and we integrate with a few different ESPs, but you can essentially create those segments in Klaviyo, and we're integrated with Klaviyo, so we can sync with that segment. So anytime someone falls into a Klaviyo segment, we can trigger an individually personalized card to go out. And if we use our mail match tech, then again, we don't even need their physical address. We can match it to a physical address and send the card out to them.
To go back to the physical address piece, so if let's say someone's on the list, they haven't bought yet, are your customers or your users, are they ever doing things to get the physical address to send things in, or usually mail match is kind of the way to go?
They typically just use mail match because, as I'm sure you've seen with opt-in forms, typically don't want to add more fields than is necessary. So we don't necessarily need it. And so brands are using our tech to just find the address for them.
Wow. That was a brilliant thing to figure out, as you guys know. So that's just awesome. The Obvi example was really fun. Can you just tell us another story about a brand, who got started on this? What kind of targeting did they do? What kind of campaign did they send? Like this is really kind of a lost channel.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you two if you're good with that. Two of my favorites. One is Beard Brand, who is like an OG men's grooming brand. And they wanted to send a campaign to their repeat buyers, but those buyers haven't purchased in at least 6 months or to a year. And so with a men's grooming product, you're kind of using it regularly. If you've gone off and haven't purchased in 6 months, you're like gone at that point. It's almost reacquiring the customer at that point. And then they even targeted folks that were unengaged with their emails. Like they used a Klaviyo segment to say, we're only going to target people that are either unsubscribed or unengaged with our email. They're not opening anymore. So this is like as far gone as you can be and unreachable because we can't reach them by email, and they've gone 6 months without making the purchase that they were used to making. And they got a 10x return on that campaign. And we were really, really pleased with the result. And then they can automate that so that now anytime someone meets that criteria, automatically sends them the card and gets them reactivated. And that's one of my favorites from Eric Banholtz at Beard Brand. And then Four Sigmatic is another one that I really like. So big mushroom coffee brand, and they were doing an anniversary sale, which is typically one of their biggest sale events of the year. And they were doing a pretty aggressive promotion around that. And they said, we want to go back basically forever to everybody that hasn't bought from us. And so let's go back 3 years. And we were like, okay, well, that's actually really aggressive. But if you're going to do that, we're going to create a lot of different segments based on recency and frequency and create all these different cohorts. And because we're natively integrated with Shopify, we can track each of these cohorts independently right in your dashboard in the app. And so we're going to know, how do people that haven't bought in 60 to 90 days perform relative to 90 to 120 or 120 to 180, and go all the way back to 3 years in these tight cohorts. And even within those groups, how do one-time buyers perform relative to repeat buyers? So somebody that only bought once and bought 6 months ago versus bought 3 times and bought 6 months ago. And because we're tracking each of these cohorts directly in the app, they could see with real precision and clarity, like, how far back could I actually go and reactivate a customer? What type of characteristics of this customer allows me to reactivate them profitably? And interestingly, they were still able to profitably reactivate customers over 2 years after they had stopped purchasing. And these are people that have been on their email list the entire time and been receiving their messages, but they just had not taken action. And so they could see really clearly, like, okay, I actually was still able to reactivate this customer 2 years later with this offer. And it generated a ton of value and a ton of learnings for them that they could use going forward.
That's just fascinating. It's almost like when email fails, you go with direct mail. This is a true marketer question, but there's no unsubscribe with direct mail. Is that correct or no?
Right. There's no canned spam compliance, and there's no we do respect people that write in and say we don't want to receive direct mail, and you can opt out that way. Technically, there's not like a legal requirement to have an unsubscribe the same way as with email. We respect that when they ask, of course, but I can tell you, like, the number of people out of the millions and millions of cards that we sent, I could probably count the number of people that asked to not receive mail on like 2 hands. So it's really low, but it's really that, to your point, the way to reach those folks that just aren't engaging with email. It's not their preferred channel to be communicated with. Maybe they've unsubscribed, not because they don't like your brand anymore, but simply because maybe they just get too many marketing emails, and that's just not how they prefer to be contacted anymore. There's a lot of value in that segment of your audience to supplement the great work that you're doing on email campaigns. Yeah, so those recency and frequency values are typically the biggest lever in performance of the campaign. And like with that Four Sigmatic example, you could see clearly the further back you went with each successive cohort, the lower the ROAS was, until it got to the point where it no longer makes sense. And in their case, it was over 2 years later. In other brands, maybe it's 180 days, maybe it's 90 days. But recency and frequency are the 2 most important factors in terms of their likelihood to come back and buy again. Or as a prospect, as I'm sure you see with email campaigns, how long ago they opted in is directly correlated to how likely you are to be able to get them to convert. So if you hit a prospect right after they complete your welcome sequence and they haven't purchased yet, that's typically our best practice. Our best practice isn't to say, let's go back to people that signed up for your email list a year ago and see if we can get them to buy now. That's not the right place to start. We like to start based on those recency signals, and then test going back further and further and further until we see it no longer makes sense for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of age of the audience, of how many years old they are, do you see variation in that? Does that seem to matter? Yeah, great question. We hear that a lot. And a lot of brands come to us and they're like, oh,
I think it's going to work well because I target 60-year-olds. And other brands say, will it work for me because my audience is millennials or Gen Z? And so the interesting thing is that, and the data supports this, it actually works well across age ranges. It's not just for older folks. It actually works really well for younger folks because it's so unique and surprising to them. These are this is an audience that's constantly getting constantly on their phone, constantly getting bombarded with digital messages, whether it's email, SMS. A lot of the younger audience, doesn't necessarily even respond to email the same way because they've just been brought up in in a different age. And so to get something physical in the mail is so surprising and different for them that they respond to it really, really well, because they're just, how often does somebody like that get something personally addressed to them in the mail with an offer?
Yeah. And with the nice branding and the postcard, I'm curious, was there ever a test where we did direct mail with envelopes, or is postcard all the way? Talk to us a little bit about that, because I'm sure these are nice branded pieces. We don't have to deal with all those pieces of envelopes, but I'm just curious about that because that was a big piece of old school direct mail.
Yeah, sure. So we have the postcards in a variety of formats, different sizes. So based on how much real estate you think you need. Then we're going to be introducing a trifold format, which can be used almost like a mini catalog. So a lot of brands are like, how can I get into catalog marketing? Because that actually does really well. The problem is, who has the time and energy and patience to do a 16-page catalog? It takes a lot of work. And so we're introducing a format to help with our acquisition campaigns, which will give you a lot more real estate to be able to show your assortment and tell your brand story, but way easier to execute than a catalog. And then you asked about envelopes. So we actually also have robotic technology that holds a pen to paper and can write out personalized handwritten notes. And so you can do that at scale. You can trigger it the same way as you trigger a postcard campaign, but we like to use that for VIPs, for example, or brands that have really high AOV. Let's say somebody makes their 5th purchase from you. Somebody has just spent a total of over $500 or $1,000 with your brand. Trigger a handwritten note in a handwritten envelope with a stamp on it from your founder, from your head of sales, somebody at your brand that's just like, hey, Egan, just wanted to thank you for being such a valued customer of ours. It means a lot to us. And optionally, you could say, and I wanted to reward you, please take $20 off your next purchase with us as a thank you for being such a loyal customer. Signed, Mike, in a handwritten. So it's written, again, pen to paper, in natural handwriting, in a handwritten envelope, address you. Again, how often is anyone getting a handwritten envelope in the mail to them these days? It gets super high engagement. It's a little bit higher price because of the format, and it comes with you have to put a real first-class stamp on it. But for the VIPs, awesome, memorable touch point for like $2.
Wow. What a time to be alive. That's awesome. I'm glad you talked about that. I see you have a partner program here, so that's a good one. I'll be checking that out. And I think agencies and other people that do marketing for clients should definitely check that out. I'm a fan after this conversation, after seeing what's possible here. Tell us just one more time, where does an e-commerce brand need to be at to try this? Is it a certain list size, certain revenue, certain average order value? When does it make sense to test PostPilot?
Yeah, another great question. So we typically recommend about $1 million in annual sales is about the minimum that we suggest you're at to get started. And the reason for that is simply you need to have enough customers, number one, to have enough data that we can use to segment those customers in ways that we think are going to be meaningful and relevant and big enough to actually move the needle for your business. If you're not quite there yet, you should probably focus on kind of some of the other marketing tactics first, get enough customers, and then we can start working with you. Our sweet spot is kind of in that 8-figure plus range in terms of revenue, but we could work with brands, again, that are at least kind of $1 million in revenue. And all different types of categories. We're really big in consumable type categories. So think health and wellness, supplements, food and beverage, cosmetics, things like that, where there's high LTVs, but also really high competition in CAC. And they really need to focus on dialing in their acquisition and retention strategies.
Mm-hmm. And does it need to be Shopify or does it need to be e-commerce necessarily?
We really are focused on e-com, and we're natively integrated with Shopify, so you're going to get the best sort of experience and value. We can still work with CSV files, but some of the big benefits, at least for now, in terms of real-time tracking, real-time automation, and segmentation, come as a result of our Shopify integration. We plan to release some other e-com integrations next year, but for the time being, we're really focused on going deep within the Shopify ecosystem.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. I'm on postpilot.com. Is that the best place for people to check you guys out?
Yeah. So you can go to postpilot.com. I'll also mention you can go to postpilot.com/GFO, which stands for Godfather Offer, because it's an offer you can't refuse. We will literally build the whole campaign for you. We'll guarantee it ROIs for you and let you test out the channel on our dime. Because we know how to make sure it works for you. We know you're going to like it. We know you're going to come back and want to send more campaigns. So postpilot.com/GFO, you can try us out risk-free.
Wow. There you have it. Thank you so much, Michael Epstein, co-founder of PostPilot, for sharing what's working in e-commerce.